So first things first, Steve, how are you?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
I'm not too bad at all. So before we jump into the album, I'd like to jump back to kind of your earliest songwriting days. Do you remember what first kind of compelled you to get thoughts onto paper?
Um, yeah, I guess, yeah, just playing, like learning to play guitar and having so much fun learning, other people's songs and, you know, kind of that feeling of, wow, I'm able to do the things that I hear and enjoy. And I guess it didn't take very long for me to go, well, I want to make my own version of these things. And so I really only kind of like learned how to play guitar for like a year. And then I wanted to just start writing songs after that.
Okay. And what do you remember of those first songs or first attempts at songs that you kind of made?
They were pretty simple. You know, uh, as most guys say, they were bad, but it was all important building blocks. Yeah, I just remember they were much more like punk, and pop punk, and because I was listening to a lot of like Green Day at that time, and that was a lot easier for me to write something in that style. I was also listening to bands like Brand New and Taking Back Sunday, so they weren't as complex, guitar driven music, but more so vocally driven.
As the music of the band then has became more complicated, and perhaps some would argue that this latest record, Eulogy, has some of the most intricate guitar parts on it. How has your songwriting writing developed alongside with it?
As you continue to listen to more music, and especially when you write music, you think about the things you want to create, and the things that I love about guitar, the things that I love about drums and vocals, and just wanting to explore more of that. And I had to try hard to make sure that the band wasn't all about guitars in the beginning, because honestly, that was like where a lot of my attention was as many riffs and guitar leads as I could possibly do. But I felt that was busying up the music too much. And so I've been through a process of trying to figure out how to tastefully, have the guitar be a prominent part of the music, but also not stealing from the whole of the song, if that makes sense.
Sure, because I imagine it all has to serve the song in a way, yeah, whatever it is that you put in there. So whenever you start an album process, and in this case for Eulogies, what was the foundation, so to say, for what would become the album?
Like musically?
Sure.
Well, we've had so many conversations as a band over the years about, what heavy music was when we got into, heavy music, and what it was when we got signed, and where it's at now. And it's taken so many different shapes and forms. And really for us is trying to figure out, why do we like heavy music, and what is it that we're liking about it? And as we kept trying, like, we wanted to find a word other than heavy. And I realized it really was this word aggressive, that there's energy, and because you can say heavy and that means so many different things. And obviously you could say aggressive or energy or energetic to people, and it means a lot of different things. But we felt like that's kind of what we wanted to communicate in the music, in regards to how we write guitar riffs or how we structure songs, and dynamics. That's the other part too, is we don't want our records to be linear. Some bands, and there are lots of awesome bands that never, the distortion's on the whole time on the guitars, and that's awesome. I love lots of bands like that, but that's not necessarily what inspires us the most. We love the idea of, dynamics in all the instruments, from vocals all the way down to bass.
And I suppose that's an interesting analogy then, perhaps for some of the themes as well, that there are very much dynamics between light and dark. So has that always been a part of your songwriting lyrically or as well, or is that something that kind of you focused on particularly on this record?
I think it's always had a place in our music. Something that I realized a long time ago is I think when songs are just purely, I guess, really bright, or songs are purely dark, you actually can tend to not get the full picture. Like I think about it this way, when you look into the sky at night and you see the stars, you think about how bright the stars are, but you don't think about how black the night is, and those two things working together, when you actually consider the brightness of the stars and the blackness of the night, they form this incredible contrast. And we want our songs to kind of hold a lot of those things. Not all the songs will have the same percentage or relationship, but we love that idea of that contrast and how can we use that best, So that's kind of been a concept from the beginning, and we've just refined it over the years.
Right. And now I read somewhere that on this particular album, a string of bad luck, or that's maybe an understatement, but so some of the things that happened to you personally, that I believe from breaking up with a relationship to tearing your meniscus or something in your knee, to getting robbed, all those kind of little things, and finding yourself in a dark place. Why did this kind of pop up to the forefront lyrically for you this time around?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time our lyrics for me are inspired from interactions that I have with people on tour, the guys in my band. And that usually plays a role of at least 75% of what fills my brain and what I want to write about. But, being on lockdown and not touring, and not seeing the guys in the band, not getting to have those conversations that we normally have, I was really just kind of left just looking introspectively at my own life and the things that I think about. And so that's where a lot of the record was inspired through a lot of those personal experiences.
And then for me, the one thing that kind of came to the forefront, it was a kind of a line. I don't think this is the exact quote, but if you stare into the abyss for too long, the abyss starts staring back at you. So this notion of having hope, or to continue not to kind of stare into that abyss, but to look for the light spots.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
Yeah, it's basically the song "Shadows," the first song on the record.
Sure.
And really, there's probably a lot of layers to what that song is, but I basically I took part of Plato's allegory of the cave, that story, and kind of inserted myself as the main character, and then told my story and experience through that allegory, which had a different ending than the actual allegory does. But because for me, a large portion of my life I spent thinking I understood what reality is in regards to who I am, who is God, what is my relationship like with him, who is Jesus, all of these things. And I was just looking at the shadows of things that I was being told, but not actually the reality of really looking and reading the Bible. What does the Bible actually say? And I realized that I didn't have true faith. I had secondhand knowledge, secondhand faith. I was holding on to the things that other people had told me, but I had not actually looked into myself. And when I did that, it radically changed my life. And so, that's why I realized I didn't want to stare into the cave and just look at the reflections of the light, but actually look at the light itself and see what it is.
This transformation, I suppose something like that doesn't happen overnight. So what kind of gave way to allow you to kind of realize that and kind of find the right path in a way?
So when I graduated high school, went to college, and my first year of college, first semester, I had me and this other guy, we had literally the same exact schedule. So we kept seeing each other first day of class and on all the same classes. And so I was like, I guess we should get to know each other because we have the same exact schedule. And he grew up under a different belief system than I did. And while we were talking to each other about what we believed, regarding he was Muslim and I was brought up Christian, I think he started realizing, and I started realizing, he didn't really know much about what he claimed he believed, and I didn't really know much about what I claimed I believed. And that really shook me. And I realized that I was just kind of, I knew enough to communicate the basic, like tenets of what the faith is. But
Sure.
Again, it was all secondhand knowledge, really. And it really, it shook me up, because I just realized I'm talking about something that I believe is like has an eternal importance. And I've spent like zero time really investigating it. And so that's what kind of set me on the trajectory of doing lots of reading and research and looking through history, not just, I wanted to understand, okay, where did the Bible come from? How do we know whether it's true or not? Where's its origin? Textual criticism, all sorts of things, because lots of people say, oh, men wrote, it was just written by men, or it's the translations, all these things. I wanted to understand from when these letters were written until now, how did they get into my hands, and how can I trust that they're true? And then from there, once I had that foundation, I really started researching, more into different doctrines and trying to understand what the Bible is saying, and not what a bunch of, old guys are telling me.
Yeah, but people who claim they understand it.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, and but I suppose that's also questioning your faith. I mean that is I suppose an important part of faith, right? Because before you can really believe something, you have to question it first, I suppose.
Yeah, faith is defined as the assurance of things hoped for. And I realized that I had the assurance of something that I had heard somebody else said. So my faith wasn't actually even necessarily in who it was supposed to be, and that's why I said I realized I didn't have true faith. My faith was in what somebody else told me about who God is, rather than having my faith in God and actually having a linear understanding of me and my maker, rather than me and some guy who told me about my maker and my maker.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. In this entire process, and I suppose this is still a lifelong process, but what role did music play in this journey?
To be honest, unfortunately, there isn't a lot of good Christian music that I identified with growing up. It wasn't until a little bit later. It was actually, it was probably around the same time that I found a band called As Cities Burn, who I felt they were reflecting a lot of things that I was thinking as I started to really understand what real Christianity looks like. And so that was one way that music played a role. Other bands like Blindside, again, there was just a certain depth and honesty and transparency that I could relate with and understand, compared to a lot of the things I'd heard before. And so, music didn't play a big role in that side of things. Okay. Honestly, a lot of it was looking into church history and trying to find, I wanted to understand the thread of how, if I'm holding this book in my hands, how did it get here, and what is it saying? And then really that actually more so informed the music afterward.
Right. So kind of with that in mind, then, this is the last question, but what do you hope people then hear in Eulogies when they listen to it from front to back?
The record touches on a lot of different topics, but the thing that I do hope people understand is if they can kind of look through, I guess, through the lens that I was looking at life, and there is darkness to be seen, whether it's in the world or in yourself, I do believe that there is a true hope to be found in the gospel message, in a God who offers grace. Really, it's grace is, good that you didn't earn, but that it's free. And the thing that I've learned about if there's one thing that I've learned, as you said, kind of like faith is like this, like a journey that you're on, is that God's grace is far greater than I've ever understood it. And that's really what I want people to see in our music, in the messaging. And the songs are really crafted to help you feel the reality of that truth, if that makes sense. Because I love music has this power that so many other things don't have. Like somebody could listen to a conversation you and I have for 30 minutes and they listen to a 3-minute song, and that 3-minute song is far more powerful than anything I could have communicated in 3 hours or 3 days. So
yeah, that's I suppose the magic of music, right? Everybody can find something in it, and it doesn't have to be the exact, or maybe I don't know how you look at it, but it doesn't have to be the exact same thing as the artist maybe intended, but whatever they feel or find in it, that can be true to them.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, it does happen with the arts. It's kind of hard to avoid that, whether it's a painting or a song. So I can't deny that.
No, but it's great that you have another album that kind of encompasses this journey that you're on, and I hope everything turns out well. The light is coming back these days because people are able to tour again, and things are looking up. So we have a lot to be thankful of, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and hopefully, it's not just the COVID stuff. Obviously, you guys in Europe. Yeah, it's just you got a whole other problem. It's like as if COVID wasn't bad enough, So just so you know, I don't know what it looks like from across the pond, but there are lots of people who really care about what's going on there. And all the best to everybody in Europe, especially the people in Ukraine.